Hi, I'm Jacob Kelly, Mr. Funeralopolis, and I hope you brought your wellies with you today because we are going trudging through the sludge. Quick backstory for the unfamiliar. Consensus is that hardcore hooligans. Black Flag created Sludge on the second side of my war. A monumental moment in music when a bunch of edgelord purists decided to stop listening to the committee and rebel into another corner entirely. A common issue I have with punk is that it isn't very punk. Sounds stupid, I know. But what's punk about following the crowd? Having these strict disciplines and creating such conservative, bland music? Once the rebellion forms rules, it's game over. You keep shouting over uninteresting noise long enough and people are going to switch off. Exactly the issue with bands today like Shame and Maruja. Haven't got time for any of that shite, it's boring. Even the supposed experimental sections feel formulaic now. Death to the windmill scene. Drop the bomb. Apocalypse now. Back to my war. Where we? Oh yeah, nothing left inside. 3 nights. Scream. Sludge was born in those 3 tracks. Black Flag grew out their hair, opened the gates of influences, and aggressive punk collided with intoxicating doom. Next, Melvins expanded on that to produce the first proper collection of Sludge albums in the late 80s. Boris would later follow. Godflesh, Toad Liquor. Along with these, Acid Bath, I Hate God, Crowbar and Down would make sure New Orleans had its own unique version. I like to call this Shrek Sludge, cause it's insanely swampy. Throughout the 2000s, atmospheric sludge became the more popular form. An expansion into post-rock and post-metal, adding thematic and emotional weight to the heaviness. Amenra and Cult of Luna picked up where Isis and Neurosis left off. Would I be right in saying the genre's gone back to its crude origins more recently? Obviously, there's still atmospheric sludge being made. But has there been as many impactful albums here as previously? My guess is, it's such a hard thing to get right that if you're not at your best, just a slight drop in quality is extremely noticeable. If you're going that big, you simply have to deliver. I could be wrong, though. Below are my top 10 albums of this decade so far that have left the greatest impression. These are not meant to be definitive, though. It's a starting point. An emphasis on what has worked so far, what I generally appreciate in the field, and what I will continue to look for. And hopefully, there will be some surprises along the way. It's time. Get that beverage sorted. Get the joint rolled. Find a comfortable spot. Pump up the volume. I'm Jacob Kelly, and we've got a decade of doom to make sense of. For Bong Gripper's Empty, I include the opening passage from Harry Sword's book, Monolith Undertow, an essential text for anyone interested in the dirty dungeons of doom. His writing style here is exactly the kind I adore. He may be talking about a different era of Bong Gripper, as he describes hearing their 2014 piece Miserable, live in full at Roadburn, but I think it captures the essence of what these guys are about, and their overall importance. So here goes. We'd spent 3 days mainlining Duvel, Audi Geneva, and ludicrously strong hydroponic weed. The only solids to pass my lips were a couple of Capsalon kebabs, Rotterdam's infamous grease bomb, a mound of unidentifiable meat slurry topped with Gouda shavings, chips, and gloopy Dutch sauce. A fellow writer and I were covering Roadburn Festival in Tilburg for the Quietus, and had spent the last few hours in communion with 3,000 people, standing stock still, head-banging slowly in perfect union. It's like the Wailing Wall in there. In his dazed, half-hypnotized state, my friend perfectly captured the ritualistic power of doom metal done properly. Bong Gripper had just finished performing their aptly named Miserable LP in its entirety, a slow-building endurance test of brute physical base weight. By the time we stumbled into the clouds of weed smoke outside Tilburg's 013 Arts Complex, dubbed Freak Canyon by locals due to the bedraggled and often extravagantly bearded hordes of psychedelic warriors who descend en masse to the quiet university town each April, we were in a state of advanced sonic inebriation. Bong Gripper play at heinous volume, the kind that makes teeth rattle like stray dominoes, and lungs disgorge forgotten matter. That the band look like trainees in a Sunday Times top 30 legal firm, rather than grizzled doom veterans, only adds to the sense of disorientation. Roadburn is the world's foremost pilgrimage for doom, drone in the outer church of noisy psychedelia. It champions the slow, the heavy, and the weird. The festival is a serious proposition. Consider, I hate God. New Orleans sludge forefathers, whose slow-motion beastings evoke some hellish opiate withdrawal, in 100% humidity, playing in a consecrated church for 2 successive days. Where a chilled Sunday afternoon lull in the programming is a screening of Dario Argento's opulent Giallo bloodfest, Suspiria, with its creepy score performed live by Italian Prager's Goblin, sending those poor souls who had indulged too freely in fungal-based hallucinogens scuttling for the back doors. Over Roadburn's 4 days, peals of feedback and sustain beat away at the year's residual cortisone, like some cathartic audio elixir, resetting wayward strands of DNA. At times, it felt like I was experiencing the sonic embodiment of a palpable universal hum, those on stage channeling a mighty audio portent, as opposed to merely playing. Music from the doom/drone continuum subverts traditional raucous tropes, the preening machismo, the virtuosity, the cult of the performer, the adolescent turbulence leaving a bare-bones structure of primal catharsis, chords that last a full half hour, a maelstrom off feedback, a Josh Shaka-esque bass blanket that shakes the bodily foundation, and, though ostensibly dark and physically oppressive, the music of Sun-O. Electric Wizard, Saint Vitus, Melvins, Neurosis, Sleep or Earth is about more than that. For me, these are agents of primordial sonic ablution, enablers of psychic transferal to a different mental plane, a punch-drunk station of gleeful oneness, a place to embrace your inner medieval psychedelic pieman, or switch off the mind altogether. Records like Sleep's Dope Smoker or Neurosis Through Sliver and Blood carry a sense of ritualistic power. You don't listen. You partake in sonic ceremony. Immortality, 2022. In 2022, Conan did what Conan always does. They created another enormous record, one which could be the biggest, baddest, and downright barbaric of their career. This you can trust. Evidence of immortality is for the fearless warriors committed to dying on the battlefield in the hopes of reaching Valhalla. For those without a flight mechanism, those going out in a blaze of glory like Toshiro Mifune in Throne of Blood. Everyone knows death is coming, but every arrow taken to the body becomes a measure of strength. Human capabilities will be tested. Death before dishonor. Crush your enemies. See them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. John Davis and his Scouse army fought the Blood Eagle. A noble contest, and some would even say they came out stronger. Their caveman doom identity being retained whilst dabbling in post-metal. The real question at this point is, have they stolen the crown from Carcass as the best Scouse metal band of all time? Have they solved the riddle of steel yet? I'll leave that one with you. Abandon civilization, for it is unnatural. Return to barbarianism, the natural state of mankind. Submersus, 2025. After completing their quadrilogy of self-titled pieces, Hell returned with a brand new title. Submersus, as in, to be submerged, an appropriate name for this kind of record, considering it wants you drowning in a thick, viscous layer of sludge. Suffocation is a likely outcome. Important to note is that existing in a new territory does not mean a drop in quality. It's business as usual from the consistent miscreant. Their sound has become more purified, less reliant on blackened detours. Instead, a direct and brutal wallop of sludge and drone. Occasionally, veering off into funeral doom, as is more typical with their other project, MSW. Whatever is new, and whatever is old, doesn't matter to me. Hell have retained their sense of controlled glacial patience, which is the key to making a classic sludge album, stretching the riffs out as much as possible, and it cannot overdo the drums. Let me tell you something. A carried-away drummer is not what you want in this arena. The anticipation makes every tribal strike enormous. A ritualistic ceremonial march forwards, with the drums marking time and allowing the right spaces for the wall of harmonics to build. Every drum strike must feel like that tower collapsing. Hell and Primitive Man are arguably the best at this. They create entire worlds and then send them crumbling into the sea as though caught in Inception's limbo land. and Thou-Myopia, 2022. An extremely moving and beautiful release that sits on the border between atmospheric sludge and funeral doom. The former may be the more dominant sonically, but the latter mainly comes through in its ability to handle itself emotionally. If this record has now reached modern classic status, it is through the careful balancing act involved. Those who have heard the two bands' individual works know their styles shouldn't necessarily fit together. Mizmor rely on the atmospheric darkness of black metal, whereas Thou were traditionally much more aggressive. However, Thou have shown a real ability to develop their sensitive side to create an increased lingering impact in recent years. Still as cool as ever, but now in this rounded and evocative way. Congenital truculence with a heart, outpouring everything ugly and radiant, without the ability to hold back. Essentially, becoming some sympathetic universal monster character, with a bitter sense of tragedy infused. We will continue to root for them. Myopia has moments that sound like Mizmor, moments that sound like Thou. Then, these entirely new sections, where neither sound like themselves. There have been those that argue it's too split, ripping apart the two bands so they each have their individual sections, and not enough on the hybrid or link up. Strongly disagree. This is a Dutch and Dylan clean dap, and nothing can convince me otherwise. Break, Kneel, Crawl, 2026. In the last year, I've been very vocal about how Moloch are this underappreciated meth drinker, and this fantastic new record with its total lack of attention only emphasizes that. I enclose extracts of my experience, seeing them live and coming face to face with the singer at Roadburn. I want to say these are the quiet meth drinker, hiding in plain sight, but nothing about Moloch is quiet. They boast the stiffest bass player in all of Sludgeland. He never moves. He never responds. He only stands there with the same infuriated look on his face. Lips pushed together, a psychopath on standby. If you think he's odd, wait till you get a load of the lead singer, if a growler could still be called such a thing. A cross between Wayne Rooney and Fred Durst. Welcome to your new sleep demon. He moves like a pig pissed off with his presentation in Orwell's Animal Farm. His first call of action was to neck a beer, launch it off stage, and then rock, back and forth, staring out various audience members and waiting for his cue. Boom. It comes. He's screeching down the mic and slamming his feet into the ground in time with the drums. The shirt comes off. Sweat drips unpleasantly from red-pink blubber. The mic is tied around his neck like a tight noose. He was really frolicking about. My hero. My king. Great to see some British sludge to compete with these Yanks. Then later on, I had a personal encounter with the lead singer later on. That night at Satya. Suddenly, I felt someone falling through the crowd. He grabbed hold of my shoulder and the barrier for balance, desperately trying not to spill his beer. Sorry, just had to get to the front, he slurred intensely, following it with a giggle. I recognized this man. It was John Moloch. In seconds, I went from wanting to punch him in the face to wanting to embrace him. It was my boy. I patted him on the back and said, "Well, if it ain't John Moloch, great set before, John." He smiled. Mr. Moloch was plastered. Yeah, he'd gone through like 4 beers in his own set. Dude was just rinsing the cans. Nobody could stop him. Sadly, he left before I could ask him what happened to all the Shame and Kill List samples during the set. As for the whole John Moloch thing, maybe that needs explaining. After the John Crowbar joke, I've developed a bad habit of just calling all frontmen whose name I don't know. Hopefully this review catches the raw excitement that Moloch provide, better than a conventional review of the album. Just know the record is equally crude, confrontational, maybe even ridiculous, but utterly sincere. And Undying Love for a Burning World, 2026. Still extremely shocked by this. Neurosis are a band I'd read about regularly, but never really tackled. Through Silver and Blood was not a record that clicked instantly. It's brutal, admirably so, but also maybe even sometimes heaviness, for heaviness' sake. I'm not sure about the world it conjures, or the way it doesn't allow you to appreciate its textures. Closer to an assault that record and the industrial twangs only invite comparison to better artists in that arena like 9 Inch Nails and Godflesh. In terms of the rest of their career, didn't help that half their records are not on Spotify. After a while, hearing about them endlessly forced me to give them another chance. Starting with Souls at Zero, and working my through to the present. Slowly, an obsession starts to grow. There's pieces of all my favorite artists along the way. Ambient Metal Boris, Apocalyptic Godspeed, Proggy King Crimson on their better days, Sludgy Melvins, uncomfortably abrasive Swans, and even folk heroes Neil Young and Townes Van Zandt. All these ideas colliding together with that Beatles/Radiohead genre alliance, an unprecedented cohesiveness. Alienating at first in its difficulty to categorize, then extremely interesting when individual genre fatigue arrives to box you in. You start praising their endless ambition. Times of Grace is every bit as mind-blowing as made out to be. A sun that never sets displays needed later career maturity. Yet my favorite remains Souls at Zero. Whether that's because it was the first to convince me these were an insanely good band, or its Wicker Man-like vision remains unclear, but it sits at the top, unchallenged. I still struggle a bit with Through Silver and Blood. Fast forward to a night before this new album is released. I'm wondering what is up with the fate of this band. They're becoming one of my favorites, and I realize I don't know anything about them. Start Googling them. Oh, cool. They had a drummer. In Sleep. Makes a lot of sense. Oh no, The frontman abused his wife and child for years. An absolute disgrace to the Kelly name. Wait, he came forward and self-canceled himself? That's a new one. Points for admittance? Another example of a master manipulator trying to control the narrative? I guess there's no winning that one. Maybe just don't abuse your wife and kid. On top of that, there's wider ramifications for heavy and extreme music. Is it a site of emotional catharsis? Or an excuse for bad individuals to congregate? All of this happened 7 years ago. Scott Kelly's whereabouts are unknown. The rest of the band's heads blew off so badly they didn't know what to do. They did the right thing and kicked him out. But they stopped working, robbing the fans of what they had loved so dearly. How do you even come back from something like that? I wrote them off. We all did. Too much time had passed. If they were going to do anything, it would have happened sooner. No hope of new material, or seeing these incredibly talented people live. Less than 24 hours later, and everything changes. A surprise album drop. The fact they even got it made is an achievement in itself. An average return would have sufficed given the baggage involved. The fans would have forgiven them. It would have been pleasant enough just to see them back together again, like one of those old nostalgic TV series reunion episodes. They had to go one better, far surpassing anything we could have ever expected. What they did here is almost unfathomable. It will sit as one of music's greatest comebacks on the same level as Muhammad Ali's Rumble in the Jungle. ISIS band member Aaron Turner has joined to contribute vocals. A perfect fit, giving us the best of both worlds. A new Neurosis album and a new ISIS album all in one. As with a sun that never sets late, career maturity once again. And the realization that heavy can mean so many things, not just delivering crushing noise. It's a softer record, under the ISIS influence veering into post-rock territory. Slightly more than metal, but that makes it no less heavier. You know what? There's something really beautiful about the alliance that has been forged between ISIS and Neurosis here. It goes against all that fucking Britpop nonsense of the 90s with bands just eating each other alive under competition, revealing their uglier, self-interested sides, never producing better albums. Both Oasis and Blur were just shite. Radiohead had to break away from all that crap and form a new thing entirely. There's something undeniably moving about a scene that supports itself, and obviously the comeback we have witnessed. Nobody ever had an album of the year contender on the cards, but it has happened. Doesn't matter if you're team, Neurosis, or neutrals. There's something that can be appreciated by all here. Primitive Man-Observance, 2025. My personal favorite of the bunch. Once again, I enclose my notes on seeing these live at Roadburn back in April. To me, Roadburn at its best should be about ignoring the familiar route of live performance as a collection of best hits. Instead, treating the space with as much importance as the studio to create something unique and memorable. You can't let your history do the work already. No, You cannot rely on that here. You have to redefine your image and put across the visual aesthetic of the band. Use it as a form of storytelling, further expanding the mythology. Primitive Man were the group that, front to back, really ran with this idea. Firstly, their warm-up music pre-entering the stage. Daniel Johnston and the Velvet Underground, both of which absolutely make up the DNA of this band. Even the former, who appears way too soft for this arena, but you could say he was the OG Primitive Man with his childlike approach to music. The Texan would sit in a room with his acoustic guitar and the worst recording equipment going, but somehow all the snap, crackles, and pops would turn it into something magical. I guess that's the Primitive Man ethos in a nutshell. The complexity and the simplicity. Their setup is very basic. 3 guys. A drummer, who has plenty of rest between striking his gear with every hit rattling the bones. The humongous lead singer howls down the mic like a raging bear. Honestly, this guy made me see how growling vocals could enhance a piece and not be silly. Otherworldly, returning to some kind of ape status. You ever seen any of those movies from the Italo cannibal boom cycle? I'll make this easier. Have you ever seen The Descent? Hearing these guys is like being trapped in a cave with those abhorrent monsters. The lead singer creates pure Merzbow-like noise, whilst the bassist, some Mexican cartel-looking geezer, keeps it vaguely rock and roll with steady riffs. Seeing them live, I respected them more than ever because you can see in their early days when the abrasive noise influence wasn't quite clicking. This never actually left. The noise terrorists just got better at incorporating it into their doomy apocalyptic vision. I didn't even mention the best part of all this. They projected onto a screen behind them this hazy, distorted infrared VHS footage of violent atrocities hidden under static snow. Ritualistic tribal warfare. The concert as ancient battlefield. I'd have committed murder for these guys from the instant they started their remembrance set, which featured all their classics so far. Can we go back and give Scorn 5 stars now? Many are calling Observance Primitive Man's best album to date. Seer is undoubtedly something of an instant classic. It's too soon for me to say, though, about the whole thing. I'm still digesting Scorn as a potential masterpiece. Regardless, yes, Observance is at least up with Caustic. This set, on their second day of performing at Roadburn, included the full album, proved to be even more crippling and crushing than their previous one. Attributed this to the greater focus in delivering an album over putting certain songs across their various albums together. Unified would be the word. And we were absolutely that, rocking back and forth in time, hand in hand into the destruction. As for that hazy infrared VHS footage, this time it was even more topical. News reports of fascist ICE dogs in the streets performing their witch hunts. Out comes the point, and then the scream. Donald Sutherland's quivering mustache launching 1,000 nightmares. The grand return of McCarthyism, a terrifying sickness. Down with it. Slow Hole, 2024. Slow Hole are fucking terrifying. What else would you expect from a Thou recommendation? See my write-up on these at Roadburn. If Crowbar were these 200-pound Shrekian creatures, drinking garage beers and occasionally wrestling with alligators by the swamp, well, these fellow NOLA sludgers, Slowhole, are the shit that comes out the swamp. Ever seen that movie Attack of the Giant Leeches? Swamp Thing? Those are about these guys. They belong out of some Corman-esque creature feature. They don't come to play. They come to attack. No, to obliterate. Arriving on stage in near pitch-black darkness with the majority of them putting their backs to the audience. Appearing like entranced sidekicks under the spell of their master, the Swamp Queen, leader of the band. If you can recall the infamous tunnel scene from Possession, but you were to change the location to an underwater quagmire, you're getting closer to how terrifying these are live. Blame Thou, they suggested Slowhole to Roadburn. And to think I almost missed them. It was my driver who suggested we sneak these in between Blackwater Holy Light and Primitive Man. Sumac. The Healer, 2024. Sumac, who are not to be confused with the other fantastic sludge band Suma, is often described as Aaron Turner's side project to Isis and Neurosis. Do not mistake that for thinking these guys are optional. Perhaps they may put off those post-rock purists after a smoother sound. But if you're into ugly, distorted Japanoise and free improvisation, these are not to be passed on. Rougher on the edges, but arguably a higher degree of experimentation. These come from that Comets on Fire tradition. Alright, it's a bit more established now because of the internet, but around the 90s, Westerners suddenly got a lot more access to Japanese psych rock and its unique abrasive edge, which was always inspired by a combination of the Stooges or Ornette Coleman. Since noise rock was really beginning to take off in America, people were glad to be hearing this stuff for the first time from Japan, that dated back to the 70s. It was the right time for it to become accessible. Comets on Fire were one of the first to pick up on this and kind of blend sonic youth with less releases Danudes. Sumac are more interested in merging KG Hyena with Melvins. Sort of like what Boris are capable of doing, but Sumac wouldn't be pulling any bullshit like dropping a dumb indie album now and then. These guys are too dedicated to menace and terror to pull any soft shite like that. Songs go on as long as they have to. 12 minutes. Fuck even 25 minutes in some cases. Creating sonic landscapes out of ceaseless feedback and then tearing them the fuck down. Forever pulling the kind of antics that aren't going to win over a large crowd, but for those into it though, it's biblical. In the past, you'd gather around the hit and miss, obscure and cheaper vinyl crates gathering dust. Now you flock to albums on Rate Your Music with scores of like 3.4 and declare them the greatest things in the history of music. Not only that, but you have to talk about them like they're quintessential to the history of music, despite hardly anyone listening to them. Come join us, cowards. In 2024, the emotional terrorists went unfathomably hard, even for their own standards. After a lot of collaborations and splits, the band cleared out the room and got back to the familiar, except with everything they'd learned from other bands along the way. There's added emotion that they didn't have previously. A greater concentration on economy, hitting the sweet spots effortlessly without having to lumber around in search of glory. Going past the 7-minute mark is no longer a necessity. They have the confidence to do it in less, all of which has led to some embracing the record not totally as sludge, but closer to Seattle grunge. I get the idea, but the vocals are of the growly variety, and it lacks the accessible sexual mischief to the desperation. Personally, the classification means very little to me. What's good is good. At the end of the day, it took me off an archival and live album path, and back onto new music again. COVID slowed things down, there wasn't much coming out, and whatever did make it out, the factory wasn't worth the effort. Umbilical was a statement that things had changed. Time to get back in the saddle. Thou fans are saying it's as good as Heathen, making it one of the best sludge releases of this decade. It's certainly a high point. We're going to do things a little differently for this episode. Instead of going into discussing just movies, we're going to do a day in the life segment, a fully gonzo piece that serves as a kind of diary entry, whilst casually firing off reviews left, right, and center. You want to be stocked up on the beers for this one. It's quite the rambling odyssey. Well, away we go. Saturday, 25th July, 2026. When you're meeting up with my father, you need a carefully planned itinerary. He's an autistic control freak. Even in retirement, spontaneity hasn't quite entered his vocabulary. A minimal degree of improvisation leaves him anxious. Every minute of the day must be accounted for. He blames it on his diabetes and the need to maintain the correct blood sugar levels. But really, he's just some Hank Schrader / Major Garland Briggs member of the Square community, totally incapable of getting loose. We met at Liverpool Central Station around 1 p.m. and walked up Bold Street over to Coco Brazil, a proper restaurant for true carnivores. I had us a reservation booked already, so he wouldn't panic about ensuring there would be a free table. This didn't prevent the hyperventilating. He just found something else to get wound up about. There was a sea of gays flooding the streets that afternoon due to Pride. If any of these rainbow flags get in my way, there will be trouble, he said. He might be the first person in history to disapprove of Pride taking place, and not as a transgressive act of homophobia. This was nothing like what happened in Berlin. It wasn't their sexual orientation that bothered him. This guy had meat to eat and a new Christopher Nolan film to greet, places to go, and people to see. Huge crowds simply could not get in the way of the agenda. I half respected his dedication. We settled into our seats and ordered 2 pints of Corona for starters. Then, we made our way over to the buffet table. You gotta be careful here. You don't want to fill up on the colorful decoration. Avoid bread for starters. Dabble in the rice, mushrooms, and a little sauce. Do not go overboard. We're dealing with the kind of restaurant that weeds out the men from the boys. Master tacticians prevail. You gotta go full Jose Mourinho in a place like this. Keep your eyes peeled and stay frosty. Round after round of meat is then hurled at your table from the chef at the edge of the room. Make a note of what you like for revisits, and do not waste time with the weaker options. The pork sausages are a particular favorite, so be sure to try some of those. Above all, make sure you get your money's worth. You come here to play, so forget all notions of a relaxing meal. This is a battle between your stomach and the restaurant. They want your wallet, and you want their food. Get more than you paid for. Do not let the bastards win. At 1:45 p.m., we shuffled over to Red Lion for a pre-film pint. Conversation turned towards Dark 30, a film I'd rewatched the previous night. A near-perfect procedural. Slick, gripping, completely captivating. Boasting the set piece of Bigelow's career. And yet a complete waste of time, because it refuses to engage with the ethical decisions made that led to the capturing and murdering of Osama bin Laden. It tells the story, but it doesn't know how to feel about the story. A missed opportunity to capture the effect on the American people of their government, continuously choosing violence and creating bigger monsters. Whilst not as insidious as American Sniper, its clueless inability to tackle the repercussions head-on firmly positions it in the John Ford/D.W. Griffith camp of expertly crafted controversial American entertainment. Thank God we eventually got something as intellectually playful and knowingly ambiguous as Sicario. Glasses of Erdinger is all we left behind. About 10 or 15 minutes before the film, we made our way to the IMAX. It's almost 2:30, my father kept reminding me on the way as he anxiously kept checking his watch. With any luck, we'll miss the military propaganda adverts, I threw back at him. All for 2 or 3 trailers before the movie to get you in the mood with some upcoming attractions, but a half an hour pre-film slot for a 3-hour movie is insane. My father had plenty to say about that. I even noticed the look of horror on the man's face when moments before the film started, someone sat down in the empty seats next to us and placed a load of supermarket snacks on the small table tray. This man loathes crunchers. Their unpredictable behavior was making him rattled. He looked ready to strike. Somehow he held back. The Odyssey was incredible, by the way. Oh man, where was this Odysseus character back in the days of living on the Wirral and trying to get back from Liverpool in a taxi after a night out? This guy was willing to defy the gods to get his boys back home. You can't teach that. Didn't know what I always really needed in this life was a Pirates of the Caribbean horror movie. Jason and the Argonauts' buffoonery is back, the huge epic spectacle looking its bloody best. Swords and sandals in blockbuster mode. Each new island boasts an entirely new world, from giants to near Lovecraftian beasts. A psychedelic and haunting trip to Hades is the standout. Didn't expect it to be this terrifying. Then, after all that nonsense, the film finds a way to say something serious, offering a fresh perspective on the Battle of Troy that will be sure to rattle the right-wingers and battle reenactment communities who didn't have feeling sympathy for a well-worked maneuver on the menu. Mr. Nolan always wanted to be taken seriously. He got his Oscar. He could have sat back and taken the glory, but the dude just seems thrilled to have killed his harsh superhero/fanboy reputation. Even I've underrated him at times, in all fairness. Better yet, though, he only seems to be getting better, and proving why he should be respected. This guy's gonna have quite the legacy when he's finished. We'd been to meet heaven and then to hell all in the same afternoon. What a day. What a day. But it was far from over. I still had an evening of sludge music to attend at Outpost. We went our separate ways. My dad to the train station, and me back to the flat. My cat Dolly needed feeding, and believe me, she's very aware of the time. I was a free spirit bouncing between schedule enthusiasts. How had life come to this? Opportunity to charge up the phone and rolled on out. Sadly, I missed the majority of the first band because I thought the venue was Quarry just up the road on Hardman Street. Turned back around and hiked back towards the correct location. Outpost is a wonderful little dive bar like the Swan, but for trashy film fans. Godzilla and various VHS tapes line the walls. Not an ounce of professionalism to be found. Just that raw local pulse that lets you know instantly, this is the mothership. This is where it all happens. Ordered a lager. You gotta be a nerd to know your way around the independent boozer's range of beers. I'm a simple man with simple tastes. I carried the glass over to the door at the end and went through to the live music area. This time, Rope Burn were just wrapping up. A shame because I couldn't find too much online about these fellas beforehand. Nothing on Spotify, unfortunately. Which, as lazy as it sounds, is like not existing in this day and age. Even if it is a noble political stance. All I can say is for the band that got the early smaller local spot, I was very impressed. A lot of skill there. In working to these stunning crescendos where the lead singer, dressed in an acid bath t-shirt, my fucking guy, would explode passionately. Wished I'd seen more of them. If I noticed them about town, though, on another poster, I'd happily go watch them. Just checked again. They do have 3 tracks on the Spotify. All decent stuff. last-minute booking in place of another that pulled out. No doubt got their name from the classic Melvin's record. Couldn't tell you if these were good or not. Their online output, mainly demos and mixtapes, had been respectable if a little underwhelming. Meat and potatoes. Witnessed them in the flesh. I couldn't tell you if that added to it or took away from it. Definitely not as ignorable when you get up close and personal. These two sweaty freaks came onto the stage with their long hair and Christian death vests, ready to get some of their own back on an unjust world. One of them had one of those wrist spikes wrapped around their arms. Always found them a bit cringeworthy. His was amusingly long, and all the spikes looked like they would fold under questioning. Parody? I think so. Maybe genius, maybe dumb. Who's to say? Before each song, whenever there was a gap between fucking this and fucking that, they would try to explain the absurdly specific track titles such as Fentanyl Overdose in Mackey's on the ramp toilets. There was Piss Bomber, about a suicide bomber who really needs a piss. The guy's timing was pretty good, that he could deliver a joke like, "This is dedicated to an old friend of ours who is no longer with us, Kim Jong-il." Not always a fan of the repeated edgy and empty provocation humor, but the delivery was reasonable. Anyway, every time I wanted to lean forwards, fists raised, and shut this singer up, he would hammer out these groovy riffs on his guitar that made me want to salute the fucker. You don't quite get that experience on the recorded material. I believe they're all actually weak live recordings. It's drowning out their skill rather than adding another textural layer. As a fan of Les Release's Danuts, I don't say this often, but get in the fucking studio, lads. Themselves Tomb Slab, and you just know with a name like that they're going to be fucking miserable. Nottingham nutcases looking to take the throne from Iron Monkey. Only one record into their career with their self-titled debut. But things are looking great for them, other than some questionable hair choices. Two of them could have been twins with dreads lower than Matrix coats. These fellas came armed and ready to tear up Outpost. Tomb Slab have another of these hip-hop looking frontmen with a cap to the back. I thought he was their manager at first, or some equipment carrier. Soon as he grabbed the mic, he exploded into action. Some of the best blackened vocals I've heard in a long time. He weaves in and out of the crowd, howling the lyrics into people's faces. I was so close to the guy, I felt as though I was man-marking him like he was Lionel Messi. We were in the presence of greatness. Apparently, their last venue had a barrier, and he didn't like that separation. You could tell. A natural entertainer. A performing iron monkey. He swung the microphone round his neck, stamped the floor, and stared out his audience. He had definitely studied the great John Moloch. After Caesar had freed the apes, I decided to call it a day, skipping the Omega-3 or whatever they were called. It had been a hot day, and the chafing was horrendous. I got out of the sweat den, and back to the comforts of the gaff where a bored, lonely cat would be wanting some attention. Rigid time schedules had devoured me. One foot in front of the other, from restaurants to cinemas to boozers. That's enough trudging through the sludge for one day. Transmission over. Funeralopolis radio out.